So we're going to talk about what to plant now. Mid-May, our soil temperatures are about 72 degrees. Our nighttime temperatures are above 50 degrees. We know that we're not going to have any more frost. Our last frost has passed. And we're getting into the warm season, the summer stretch. It's coming soon. And there are certain things that we probably will not see any return on. I'm pretty sure we won't. Your peas, your potatoes is a little late for potatoes. You potentially could do a really short, early potato, but I would suggest not. It's going to be a little late, I think, right now with our soil temperatures at 72. They like to grow pretty strongly around that temperature. You could try it. If you were going to try it, I would do, a pretty deep trench, 6 to 8 inches deep. You'll dig your trench with a trenching shovel, and you will place your potatoes about 8 inches to 12 inches apart, the individual potatoes. Make sure you've got a good seed potato. Place it at the bottom of your trench and backfill that with half of the soil, about 3 inches of soil. And then once that potato has emerged, once that potato plant has emerged, you see leafy green that's about 4 to 5 inches above the soil surface, then utilize the rest of your soil from your trench, backfill that all the way up until you're just leaving an inch or two of that green leafy material sticking out of the soil surface so it can still photosynthesize, and allow that to grow another 5 or 6 inches, and then go ahead and come in with a really thick, 6 inches deep plant-based mulch. Come in and cover or hill it again with your mulch. Easy way to grow potatoes, pretty simple. It is pretty late right now, but if you've got an early potato, you might give it a go. I'm not super great at growing potatoes, but that could be a possible a possible crop to get in the ground right now while our soil temperatures are not too hot. Spinach, arugula, some of those more tender leafy greens are more than likely just going to get too stressed and try to bolt. Cilantro is just going to bolt. But there are some plants who just love the heat and are ready to hit their stride as soon as they get their roots in the soil. And some of those are going to be peppers, of course. Really love warm temperatures. I would go ahead and get my peppers in the ground. I would make sure that initially, really look at that 10-day forecast. Make sure you don't have any temperatures that are going to go below 50 degrees at night, and then get them in the ground. And make sure you don't have, 5 days of rain coming. If you do, wonderful, but don't put your peppers out right into a rainy stretch. They can be a little sensitive to that, especially if they're being transplanted. They can get a little transplant shock and a little fungal issue if they're weak. Tomatoes, another one of the nightshade family. All the nightshades really just love the warmer temperatures except for those potatoes. Your tomatoes, great to get in the ground right now. When you plant your tomatoes, if you're getting a transplant that has some yellowing already happening, you might just go ahead and break off those lower branches and then plant your tomato very deep. Plant it up to the first set of leaves. They'll branch out, they will root out, from their stem, and that gives them more of a surface area to acquire their nutrients from. The more root system they have, the more viable they're going to be in getting nutrition to themselves. Eggplant, love the warm temperatures. Sweet potato though, if you had sweet potato slips right now, perfect time to get those going. You can usually get those at your farmer's market, might get some of those at your big box stores. They'll be a little hard to find right now just because they're very coveted. You can certainly make your own sweet potato slips, but that's something that you want to start in, say, February. You would take a sweet potato, a good solid known variety if you can, and you can either submerge that in the soil, a dampened soil, a tray of soil, submerge that in the soil, keep it moist. It takes a good month and a half, 2 months before you start seeing any leaf emerging from that soil. But once you have those vines starting to emerge, you can actually break those off if you're utilizing soil versus just using water to to get your sweet potato to forcing your sweet potato to make slips, if you're using soil, it'll actually have a little root material attached. Same, you know, if you were submerging it or half submerging it in a jar of water, you would start to see some roots that would develop, but those roots are not necessarily adapted to the soil. The ones that you are pulling out of the soil, if you start your slips in the soil, are going to be more adapted directly to the soil. Basil, another plant that really loves the heat, doesn't really love a lot of humidity and moisture right when it's being transplanted, so watch that 10-day forecast, see where you're at. But if you've got some dry weather coming, nice sunny weather, you've got plants that are well hardened off, that are have already been exposed to outdoor temperatures and the full sun, by all means get those in the ground right away. They're gonna love it. Your herbs. A lot of your herbs, especially your hardy herbs that are a little more woody, like thyme and your oregano, rosemary, sage, all of those guys are going to do quite well right now if you get them in the soil. They could go in earlier. They're hardy. They can handle some cooler temperatures. They don't mind nighttime temperatures that are going to go below 50 degrees. Certainly don't let them get a frost, but they can go in now also. Cucumbers. If you have transplants, that's wonderful. That's fine, fine, fine. Especially if they're beautiful and healthy like these. Thank you, Wild Spirits Farm. These are gorgeous transplants, really nice and healthy. Tiffany April Rains grew these for our program, and they are gorgeous. But if you are, if you're not finding transplants for your cucumbers, or they don't look so wonderful, it's a great time to start them from seed. Plants that are started directly from seed tend to do very well. They become rooted in place. They don't have that transplant shock. If it's a good, healthy soil that has good soil structure, that's well balanced, seeds like squashes and cucumbers and you know, any of your cucurbits are going to do great directly sown. So that's winter squash, summer squash, whether it's zucchini or a straight neck or crooked neck yellow squash, summer squash, good to go ahead and sow now. Be advised that squash bugs and squash spores are a nuisance anywhere you garden. And yes, you can wait until later in the season to get those in the ground, but it doesn't necessarily ensure that you're going to get outside of the window of the vine borer, the squash vine borer. One way you could help prevent the pest issues is keeping your plants, really healthy, keeping their nutrition level up. We'll talk about that shortly. Your marigolds, a lot of your flowers are going to be fine to be transplanted now. I'm not a flower person necessarily, even though my family was florists. I'm a food person. Kale's pretty hardy. A lot of kales you can still transplant right now. They do very well in the partial shade. They do very well in the cooler temperatures, but they can still get their stride in the summer heat and make their way all the way till fall and even over winter if you allow them to. Ground cherries, a really fun, unique plant. It is, they call it a husk cherry, ground cherry. It's in the same family as the tomatillo. They are a really fun treat for kiddos if you've got some young ones who love to be in the garden. It's a sweet treat, a cool plant, that cool meaning interesting. If you want to get some of those in your garden, by all means, do the ground cherries. They love warmer temperatures. This is a fun mix right here. We were talking about a diverse cover crop mix. What about a diverse vegetable mix? This is the Milpa seed blend from Green Cover Seeds. If you are a community gardener who is growing for any of your food pantries, if you donate any food to your soup kitchens or your local food banks, or just into your community, consider tapping into the, I can't remember the name of it. It's the Milpa program from Green Cover Seeds. They will donate seed in order to plant a Milpa garden. And so that is a technique that is basically utilizing many species of plants, at least 4, 5, 6 different functional groups or plant families. It's a beautiful mix. This has got winter squash, summer squash. It has mung beans and turtle beans and adzuki beans and kidney beans and a lot of legumes, some peas. that are going to do well in the summer heat. It has cover crop seed in here. It has a little bit of buckwheat. I see it has sunflower. It has so many different seeds. A little bit of okra in here. Just a cool mix. So the mix is separate from the sweet corn. It also comes with sweet corn. This is a Mayan planting technique, not always utilizing vegetable crops, not always using cultivated vegetable varieties, but it's more the technique. It's about diversity. It's about having many functional groups represented in the blend, so many plant families represented in the blend, and they work together in unison, in synergy to support each other. When you have a lot of functional groups, a lot of plant families represented in the same planting space, you have cooperation, not competition. When you have a field of just corn, they all have a very similar soil microbiomes, very similar nutrient needs, very similar pest pressures, all very similar. That's where competition comes in, because the resources are limited, because they're all pulling from the same resource bank. When you have diversity, when you have many functional groups represented in your blend, then each one of those plant families is going to represent its own functional group of microbes, its own suite of functional group of microbes. And so the corn family is going to represent a suite of microbes that it does well with. The cucurbits or the squash family are going to represent families of microbes or functional groups that have their own specialty roles, and they will do those uniquely in, for their preferred plant family, but all of the adjacent plants benefit from those functional groups. They benefit from those specialty roles, those unique genetic propensities. And so you've got nitrogen fixers, you've got phosphorus solubilizers, you've got zinc reducers, iron and manganese reducers. You have many different organisms in there that are going to work together to take your soil, sand, silt, clay, organic matter, and turn that into a nutrient supply, a nutrient delivery system to your plants. And so having many functional groups of plants in one compact area, in one soil zone, will actually do very good. They will cooperate and not compete. So all of those guys are great. Beans, whether they are pole beans, whether they're dry beans, whether they're runner beans, whether they are bush beans, all are going to do really great right now. The soybeans or edamame would do really great right now. Your mung beans and lentils, depending on the type of lentil. Garbanzo beans, going to do great right now. Might be a little late for my favorite soil hero fava bean, but you could potentially get the plant to grow. I don't know if you would end up getting seed from it. I love saving seed, so I'm always thinking about that. It's like, will that plant go all the way to seed? Will I be able to save mature, healthy, viable seed from that plant? If I'm not going to be able to do that, and I'm just going to consume the fruit, that's fine. But if I indeed want to preserve a seed in my own seed bank, and I want to make sure that I'm getting viable seed at the end of the season, I'll think about that before I plant it. Do I have enough time? We have a 155-day growing season here. It varies, a couple days forward or backward. So just think about your growing season, how much time it would take for the seed, once it's in the ground, to come to a viable, delicious fruit or viable seeds. So whether it's your cucumbers, your summer squash, your winter squash, your pumpkins, all of those really great to get in the ground right now. Okra, we're getting a little late. You might want to look for transplants on that, but don't cut yourself short. You'll definitely get okra. I don't know if you'll get viable seed on the other side of it, but perhaps, depending on your season. Some of the lettuces do quite well in the heat, so just look at your varieties, read your seed packets, see if you can get some lettuces going. If not, go ahead and start them in your indoor area, and you can tuck head lettuces into open spaces in your garden. Say you had beans sown, bush beans, and you got 50% germination, and now you have these gaps. We'll bring in some transplants of heat-tolerant lettuce and get those in the gaps so that you can get some more functional diversity, more functional groups, more plant families. Sunflowers, zinnias, nasturtiums, There's a lot you can still plant right now directly from seed, and a lot you can still transplant into the ground. Everything can pretty much be transplanted into the ground that can tolerate the heat. Carrots are something that do like to have a little bit of a cooler shaded soil where moisture is being retained. I'm just looking for a board right now. If you have a board and you've got plenty of moisture in the soil, you could get some carrots started. Pardon me for stepping out of frame here, but I'll just show you a little technique that you can use to get some carrots started. And when I start carrots, I always mix them with a little bit of radish seed so that I can see where the row of carrots are, because the carrot seed is so tiny, and when they start to germinate, they're so tiny, those little seedlings are so tiny. So take your carrot seed pack and put in about, half the amount of radish seed in there. Shake it up with your inoculum, and you'll have a little indicator plant that will germinate before your carrots, and that'll tell you when to pull the board. So basically, I just open up the soil just slightly, just pull a really shallow furrow or a line in my soil. I would sprinkle that carrot seed in the row here, spacing it out as well as I could. You could always mix your carrot seed with a little more radish, or you could, say you wanted to use a little beet, or you wanted to have a little lettuce. Well, don't do lettuce. I think something similar, growth habits would be great. But you could also just mix it with a little bit of sand or rock dust just to spread that carrot seed out so you don't have to thin it a little later. And you just sprinkle your carrot seed on here, give it a light watering. Don't wash your carrot seed away, and then just tuck a board over your carrot seed. Press it down, get good seed to soil contact. Step on the board if you want to, so you can get really great seed to soil contact, and leave the board on there until you start seeing the radish seedlings sprout. Once they start to germinate, you can either wait a day or wait another day, or you could go ahead and pull it. But the key is to not pull this board in the heat, right in the beginning of the day. Pull in the evening so that they have an opportunity to adjust to the sun. They have been blocked from the sun, those little seedlings, but that keeps the moisture in place so that you don't have to keep watering it. You can't mulch over carrot seeds because those seeds are so tiny and those seedlings are so small when they germinate. They can't really break through the mulch. You won't get good germination that way. Using a board or something like that will help you maintain moisture and get good seed to soil contact and have better germination. Okay, that's what you can plant now.